picture this, a bustling city, Surat, in India. It's 2019. Life moving at its usual pace, but beneath the surface there's a storm brewing. A storm that will soon engulf a quiet apartment complex. A wave of shock and mystery.
Yeah, it's always fascinating, how seemingly ordinary settings become the backdrop for extraordinary events. It's a reminder that beneath the veneer of normalcy, human lives are often filled with complexities and secrets, secrets that can erupt in unexpected ways.
Absolutely. And that's what makes the story of Isha Desai so compelling. Imagine a young woman, 27 years old, full of dreams and ambitions. She'd recently moved to Surat for a promising career in IT. Independent, private, well-liked by her colleagues, she seemed to be on the cusp of a bright future.
But you see, as we delve deeper into this case, we realize that Isha's life, like the city itself, held hidden currents that would lead to a tragic end.
Right. Because on a seemingly ordinary day in October, the silence from Isha's apartment became deafening. No one had seen her, calls went unanswered. And worry quickly turned into panic. It was as if she had vanished into thin air.
Yeah, that sudden absence. The break-in routine. It's often the first crack in the facade. It's that moment when people realize that something is terribly wrong, that the familiar has become unsettlingly unfamiliar.
And when the police finally entered Isha's apartment, they were met with a scene that, honestly, sent chills down their spines. The apartment was in disarray, furniture overturned, glass shattered, and there, amidst the chaos, lay Isha's lifeless body.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it? The image of this vibrant young woman, full of life, juxtaposed against the stark reality of her violent end. It's a scene that speaks volumes about the brutality of the crime, the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life.
A chilling reminder that violence can erupt anywhere, even in the most unexpected places. And as the police started piecing together the evidence, they stumbled upon a clue that would add another layer of intrigue to this already puzzling case.
The partially erased note, right? The one found near Isha's body. Hinting at betrayal and revenge. It's the kind of detail that immediately personalizes the crime, suggesting a complex web of relationships and motives.
Exactly. That note became a focal point of the investigation. A cryptic message from beyond the grave. It suggested that Isha's life, despite its outward appearance of normalcy, was entangled in a web of secrets and possibly dangerous relationships.
And one of those relationships, one that immediately drew the attention of investigators, was Isha's connection with a local businessman, a man named Ravi Mehta.
Ravi Mehta. Now, their relationship, it was far from a fairy tale romance. From what we've gathered from friends and colleagues, it was a turbulent affair, marked by constant arguments and a palpable tension. A tension that seemed to hang in the air whenever they were together.
This is where our deep dive takes a fascinating turn. Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Love series.
Now, to understand the complexities of this case, we need to take a closer look at Ravi Mehta. He was a successful businessman, well known in Surat social circles. He had a certain charm, a charisma that seemed to draw people in. But behind that facade, there were whispers of a darker side, a possessive streak, a streak that could erupt in anger and jealousy.
Yeah, it's like you're stepping right into a psychological thriller. You have this seemingly ordinary young woman leading an ordinary life, but all of a sudden her world collides with this charismatic figure. This guy brings with him just a whirlwind of emotions, passion, and possibly danger.
Yeah, and it's the classic setup for a twisted love story, right? Where attraction and obsession, they become so intertwined, and the lines between love and control begin to blur.
And as investigators delved into Ravi's background, they uncovered some details that painted a troubling picture. There were rumors of past relationships marked by similar patterns, possessiveness and volatility. It was as if Ravi just had this need to control the women in his life, a need that just intensified when those relationships showed signs of unraveling.
So we've got this potentially dangerous man in Isha's life, a man who may have had a motive to silence her. But the investigation didn't just stop there. The forensic evidence reveals some disturbing details about the nature of Isha's death.
Yeah, the autopsy report, right. It showed that Isha died from asphyxiation, specifically manual strangulation. Now, what's interesting here is that manual strangulation, it often indicates a personal, up-close attack. It's not like a quick, impersonal act like a shooting. It requires that sustained physical contact, you see. It's a chilling intimacy that speaks volumes about the rage and control involved.
It's just a horrifying thought, isn't it? To imagine the terror that Isha must have felt in her final moments, struggling for breath, trapped in the grip of her attacker.
Absolutely, and the forensic evidence also revealed defensive wounds on Isha's arms and hands, suggesting that she fought back with all her might. She wasn't a passive victim, she fought for her life. It just adds another layer of tragedy to this already heartbreaking case.
So we have a violent struggle, a possible motive, and a suspect with a history of possessive behavior. But hold on, before we jump to conclusions, there's another piece of the puzzle that we need to examine, the surveillance footage, the footage from the apartment complex.
Right, right. The footage showed Ravi entering Isha's apartment on the night of her death. Now, while this places him at the scene of the crime, it doesn't automatically make him guilty. People visit each other all the time, and this footage alone doesn't really tell us what happened inside that apartment.
True, but the timing of his visit is certainly suspicious. The footage shows him entering late in the evening and then leaving in a hurry, like just a few hours before Isha's body was discovered. And to add to the intrigue, we have neighbors reporting that they heard loud voices. What sounded like a struggle coming from Isha's apartment that night.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. We have these conflicting accounts. Ravi claiming he left after an argument, and then you got the neighbors. Neighbors describing this violent confrontation. It's the classic he said, she said situation, but with incredibly high stakes.
And to complicate matters even further, remember that partially erased note we talked about? The one hinting at betrayal and revenge. Well, the handwriting analysis couldn't conclusively determine who wrote it.
This is where investigative techniques, they become absolutely crucial. In a case like this, every detail matters. The police, they would have been meticulously combing through Isha's life, looking for any clue that could shed light on her relationships, her state of mind, and any potential threats she might have been facing.
And that's when they made another disturbing discovery. They found out that Isha had been receiving threatening messages from an unknown number. In the weeks leading up to her death, these messages were filled with veiled threats and warnings, just creating this atmosphere of fear and paranoia around Isha.
Can you imagine the psychological toll those messages must have taken on her? To constantly feel like someone's watching you, threatening you, just waiting for the right moment to strike. It's a terrifying thought, and it adds a whole new dimension to this already complex case.
It's like there's this shadow lurking in the background, an unknown figure with their own motives and their own secrets. And it raises some crucial questions. Who was sending those messages? Were they even connected to the murder? And if so, was Ravi involved, or was there someone else pulling the strings?
Yeah.
Someone else in the shadows?
These questions, they took the investigation down a very winding path. A path leading them to explore different theories, each with its own set of challenges and complexities.
It's like we're trying to solve this puzzle. Some of the pieces are just missing, and the ones we have don't quite fit together.
Yeah, it's the kind of case that keeps investigators up at night, the kind that just lingers in their minds long after those files are closed. Because, even with all the evidence, the interviews, and the forensic analysis, there's still this nagging feeling that something isn't quite right, that there's more to the story than what we see on the surface.
And that's what makes true crime so captivating. It's not just the facts of the case, but the human element, the emotions, the secrets, and the unanswered questions that just leave us pondering the complexities of human nature.
Absolutely. And in this case, the unanswered questions are particularly haunting. Who sent those threatening messages? Were they just a desperate attempt to scare Isha, or was it something more sinister? And if Ravi wasn't involved in the murder, then who was? Was there someone else? Someone lurking in the shadows who managed to just slip through the cracks of the investigation?
It's like these questions just linger over the case, like a persistent fog, obscuring the truth and leaving us with, well, a sense of unease. And as the investigation stalled, the public began to speculate. Rumors spread like wildfire. And the case of Isha Desai became a local sensation.
It's interesting, isn't it, how these kinds of cases, they just capture the public's imagination. Maybe it's because they tap into our primal fears. The idea that violence can erupt anywhere, anytime, shattering that illusion of safety and security.
And maybe it's also because we just crave resolution, a sense of justice being served. But in this case, justice remained elusive. Ravi was never formally charged with Isha's murder. And the mystery of those threatening messages, well, it remained unsolved.
And for Isha's family, that lack of closure was just agonizing. They were left with this gaping wound, the pain of losing their daughter, compounded by the unanswered questions that haunted their every waking moment.
It's heartbreaking to think about the weight of that grief, the feeling of helplessness and frustration that comes with knowing that the person responsible for your loved one's death might never be held accountable.
And it's important to remember that even though Robbie wasn't charged, he didn't exactly walk away unscathed. The cloud of suspicion followed him, the whispers and the rumors that painted him as a dangerous man, a man capable of violence.
Right. A reminder that even without a conviction, the court of public opinion can be swift and unforgiving. And in this case, the court of public opinion, they delivered their verdict. Ravi Mehta was guilty, even if the legal system, they couldn't prove it.
So we're left with this case. A case that defies easy answers. A story that ends not with a neat resolution, but with a lingering sense of ambiguity and unease.
It's a reminder that real life doesn't always follow those predictable arcs of fiction. Sometimes that truth, it just remains hidden, and justice is never fully served. But, even when we're facing this uncertainty, we can still find value in exploring these cases, in trying to understand the complexities of human behavior and in recognizing just how fragile life is and the devastating impact of violence.
Well said. The case of Isha Desai, it may remain unsolved, but it serves as a powerful reminder that beneath the surface of ordinary lives, there are often hidden depths, and sometimes those depths, they conceal darkness and danger.
Yeah, and it reminds us to stay vigilant, not just protecting ourselves, but looking out for those around us, recognizing those signs of trouble, and speaking up when something doesn't feel right. Because sometimes, the smallest act of awareness can make all the difference.
Indeed. And if there's one thing we can take away from this deep dive into the Surat Apartment Mystery, it's that love. Well, love can be a double-edged sword, a force that can bring both joy and sorrow, and that we must always be mindful of that delicate balance, the balance between passion and possession, between love and control.
Thank you all for joining us on this journey into the heart of a mystery. We hope this has sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to think about the complexities of human relationships and the enduring search for truth and justice.
And don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle and our YouTube channel. You'll find more captivating true crime stories there. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and as always, stay vigilant.